I just finished the worst training block I've had in probably 4 years. But as I continue to train for the World Championships, I'm actually almost completely on track. One of the reasons I was able to do this was having good goal setting practices in place and being able to adapt those goals as I progressed. In this video, we want to help educate you all on goal setting so that you can use it to help enhance your lifting as well as the rest of your life. When we talk about the basics of goal setting, usually that comes down to the 11 principles of goal setting as outlined by Gould in 2005 and by Murphy in 1996. We've taken and pared this list down to about 8 principles to try to better tackle the athlete perspective. And the first of those principles is going to be to set specific goals. Now, when we talk about specific goals, if you were to set the goal of increasing your squat, that's a little bit vague. However, if you set a goal like, I want to increase my squat 10 pounds in 8 weeks by strictly adhering to my training program, showing up for all my sessions, and being mindful in the execution of the movement, that's a lot more specific. When you're more specific in your goal setting like this, it helps give you a little bit of a roadmap on how you're going to achieve the goal, as opposed to just putting a sort of vague idea to do better out there. The second principle of goal setting is going to be to set moderately difficult but realistic goals. The reason we want things to be moderately difficult in terms of our goals is we want them to motivate us. We want our goals to force us to push harder, to do more work, to be mindful of the process, but we don't want it to be so hard that we can't get there, because then it becomes frustrating and unmotivating. And on the flip side, we don't want things to be too easy when we're setting goals, because that's not going to motivate us. That's going to allow us to slack off and not really put in the work that we should. The third principle is to set each of all the 3 types of goals. That's going to be outcome goals, performance goals, and process goals. Outcome goals are goals that are focused on a competitive outcome. These can be goals like winning a competition or setting a record. The thing is, these often hinge on other competitors. For myself, my goal right now is to try to place top 5 at Worlds. Outcome goals are pretty useful in that they give you a sort of long-term trajectory, but on their own aren't a very complete picture of how to get there. So they need to be augmented with performance and process goals. The other big thing here is that focusing on outcome goals is best further from competition and is not something you should be focusing on meet day, for example. Next up are performance goals. Now, these goals are often centered around achieving a certain standard with your own personal performance. In the case of powerlifting, that's often a goal number for your lifts at the end of a given block or program. My personal performance goals for that last block, where things kind of felt like they crashed and burned, were to achieve certain projections on my estimated 1-rep maxes. And this would have been a 405 kilo projected squat max, a 255 kilo projected bench max, and a 400 kilo projected deadlift max. However, what I ended up with at the end of the last block was a 396 kilo squat projection, a 250 kilo bench projection, and a 382 kilo deadlift projection. Now, these weren't the numbers that I was looking for, but it was good to be able to compare what I came out with versus what I was hoping for and see that, honestly, I wasn't even really that far off by the end of the block. Lastly, but definitely not least, are the process goals. Now, these are the goals that are focused on all of the actions that come together to drive that performance. In the case of powerlifting, that's going to be recovery practices like sleep and nutrition. It's going to be your programming and following that programming. It's going to be your intent and mental training on a given day, as well as cultivating repeatable, consistent technique with your lifting. The fourth principle of goal setting is to make sure that you're setting both short-term and long-term goals. Research has shown that long-term goal setting alone does not improve performance, as per Kylo and Landers 1995. The analogy that I really like is the staircase analogy. So at the top of the stairs is your long-term ultimate goal. For me, that's competing at the World Games in 2021. Along the way are a series of short-term goals in increasing difficulty that are going to help you get to that long-term goal, winning any meets along the way that I need to win, ensuring that I increase my lifts and get my body weight up to being competitive, all those kinds of things. The fifth principle of goal setting is going to be to ensure that you're setting goals for both practice and competition. And what that means is having process and performance goals for your sessions, for your lifting sessions where you're training in the gym, as well as having those performance and outcome goals for meet day and on the platform. A 1988 study of Olympic athletes showed that they performed much better when they set quality goals specifically for their practice sessions. This is a training log of mine from 2011.
So I've been recording my training in these books for 8 or 9 years now. And that takes us right into principle number 6, which is to record your goals. Now, this is a big one. There have been a lot of studies, we'll put the references up on the screen here, that have shown that the more visible your goals are to you, the higher chance they have of impacting you positively. Now, I choose to use these books. I also use a number of spreadsheets and apps to help me track my training and nutrition progress. But the important thing is that you can see and are regularly reminded what those goals are so you continue to feel motivated and put in the work to reach those goals. The 7th principle is to develop goal achievement strategies. And this is going to be coming up with a process by which you achieve these goals. Now, if your goal setting was specific enough, these should be pretty well laid out for you. For example, myself, I'm training 4 times a week. I'm eating no less than 4,700 calories a day and sleeping no less than 7.5 to 8 hours every night. It's very important that these goal achievement strategies be quite specific, often cases very numerical. The adage, how much, how many, and how often is something that's often repeated when we're talking about setting goal achievement strategies. And this leads us into our final and 8th principle, and that is to evaluate and give a self-report so that you can better your goal setting in the future. When you're evaluating your previous goal setting, you want to be asking yourself a series of questions. Did you hit your goals? Were your goals realistic? Were your goals too aggressive or less aggressive? Were your goals too vague? Do you need to come up with new goal achievement strategies? And what else did you learn from your previous goal setting that can better your application of goal setting in the future? I hope that by following along with this video, you've all learned something that you can apply to your lifting and perhaps to your life outside of the gym in terms of goal setting. If you'd like to follow along with my journey as I work towards my outcome goal of competing in the 2021 World Games in powerlifting, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you think some of your friends should see this, go ahead and share it with them, and we'll see everybody in the next video. Thank you very much for tuning in.